Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the City of Lake Forest Park City Council regular meeting for Thursday, April 25th. And at this time, moving on here, Councilmember Good, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion or changes? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I think I heard 6 ayes. Is that correct, Councilmember Saunders?
Aye.
Thank you very much. The ayes have it. We'll move forward with public comments really quickly. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. All right. We have a full house tonight. Welcome, everybody. This is a special night for a lot of reasons. So with that, we're going to start with a proclamation recognizing citizen volunteers. Actually, excuse me for a minute. I need to make sure that we consider the members of the public that might be online. Matt, do we have anyone online that is signed up for public comment?
No.
Thank you. Moving on, proclamations recognizing citizen volunteers and April 21 to 27 as National Volunteer Week. Councilmember Furtani, Vice Chair Furtani, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay. Recognizing citizens, volunteers, and National Volunteer Week. Okay, thanks. Whereas millions of American volunteers give their time to help others, contributing over 30 million volunteer hours per year, worth over $365 million. And whereas National Volunteer Week was established in 1974 and has grown exponentially every year, with thousands of volunteer projects and special events scheduled throughout the week. And whereas the City of Lake Forest Park seeks to achieve strong community spirit through active civic participation, and whereas there are many dedicated volunteers who serve the city on the Planning Commission, the Tree Board, the Climate Action Committee, the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, the Civil Service Commission, and the Salary Commission, helping make Lake Forest Park a more desirable place to live. And whereas volunteers play an important role in determining the direction of the city now and in the future. And whereas during this week, we call on all community members and organizations to help us thank, celebrate, and recognize the contribution of all volunteers. Now, therefore, the Mayor and City Council of the City of Lake Forest Park proclaim April 21st to 27th, 2024 as National Volunteer Week in Lake Forest Park as a time to celebrate our citizen volunteers and recognize the crucial role played by volunteers in our community.
Thank you, Councilmember. And with that, we're moving on to recognizing May 18th through 24th, 2024 as Lake Forest Park Safe Boating and Paddling Week. And we have the pleasure of having Vice Division Commander, Division 2, Dale Vodica, joining us tonight, as he has for many years. Thank you, Dale, for joining us. And he is the Public Affairs Officer, Division 2, United States Coast Guard Auxiliary District 13. Deputy Mayor Vodi is going to read the proclamation.
Thank you very much and welcome. Whereas on average, 700 people die each year in boating-related accidents in the U.S., with the vast majority of those accidents caused by human error and poor judgment, and not by the boat, equipment, or environmental factors. And whereas a significant number of boaters who lose their lives by drowning each year would be alive today had they worn their life jackets. And whereas the City of Lake Forest Park is bounded by 2 miles of shoreline on Lake Washington, and whereas a large number of Lake Forest Park's residents of all ages engage in recreational boating and paddling, and whereas the mission of the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary Division 2, overseeing the North Shore area, is to promote and improve recreational boating safety by teaching boating safety courses and conducting vessel safety checks. Now, therefore, the Mayor and City Council of the City of Lake Forest Park do hereby proclaim May 18th to 24th, 2024 as Lake Forest Park Safe Boating and Paddling Week. Signed this 25th day of April, 2024, Thomas French, Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Dale, would you like to receive the proclamation? And you're welcome to say a few words if you like about voting safety. Thank you very much.
So yes, I'd like to thank the city of Lake Forest Park again for giving us a proclamation again this year. Since I don't know whether you're aware, but since the pandemic, paddlecraft, the sales of paddlecraft has exploded. And therefore, the fatalities in nationwide with paddlecraft is 25% of fatalities. So with this year, we're doing an emphasis on paddlecraft safety and we're really appreciative of the ordinance the city of Lake Forest Park passed to help us out with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Commander. Appreciate it. And now to one of the highlights, sort of bittersweet. Proclamation honoring and thanking Rhonda Lehman for her service to our community. Rhonda. Honoring and thanking Rhonda Lehman for City of Lake Forest Park Police Department Lieutenant. Whereas on May 31st, 2024, after spending more than 30 years in law enforcement service, Lieutenant Rhonda Lehman will retire. And whereas Lieutenant Lehman began her work in policing for the city of Briar in 1993 as a police reserve officer, and then in 1994 as a police reserve officer for the city of Lake Forest Park, and as a police dispatcher, excuse me, in 1996 for the city of Lake Forest Park. And whereas Lieutenant Lehman became a full-time officer in 1998 and dedicated her whole career to assisting the community of citizens, police officers, and city employees. And whereas Lieutenant Lehman assisted a total of 5 chiefs of police, 5 mayors. That's extraordinary. We've only had 10 mayors. That came out wrong. I apologize. And an abundant city of city council members. Yeah, we've had a lot of those, haven't we? And whereas becoming the first female detective and first female in a supervisory position in the police department, starting with sergeant and then as lieutenant. Whereas during your tenure with the city, Lieutenant Lehman was known for being knowledgeable, competent, professional, conscientious, and dependable, witty, and deeply in caring for staff. Whereas throughout her career, Lieutenant Lehman constantly demonstrated that her priority was always the success of our organization. Now, therefore, the mayor and the city council of the city of Lake Forest Park do hereby thank and congratulate Rhonda Lehman, City of Lake Forest Park Police Department Lieutenant, on her retirement from public service, and wish her all the best for a very happy retirement. Signed this 25th day of April, 2024 by me. Thank you, Rhonda.
Okay, Rhonda, come on up here, please.
Oh, it's
So good evening, Mayor and Council and community members and everybody in the room here and everybody online. So it's with great honor that we're here to celebrate the service and retirement of Lieutenant Rhonda Lehman for the city of Lake Forest Park. So born in Seattle at Northwest Hospital, Lieutenant Lehman was raised in Shoreline. Her educational journey began through the hallways in the Shoreline School District. She attended Shoreline High School until its closure and then transitioned to Shorewood High School. Her first job was at Pioneer Pies on 15th and Aurora. And at a young age, Rhonda was raised by her single father, a resilient Vietnam veteran. Her father worked for Boeing for over 43 years, and her grandfather worked for Boeing for over 40 years. So in 1990, Rhonda found herself managing a Domino's Pizza and a position that coincided with her arrival of her first child. From there, she ventured into the hospitality business as a waitress at Coco's, all while pursuing a passion, becoming a police officer. If she wants, she can tell the story about her Barbies that led her to her law enforcement dream. While at Coco's, she met officers from Linwood and Briar Police when they got their cups of coffee, and that just pushed her interest into law enforcement. This culminated in an opportunity with the city of Briar as a reserve officer in '93, going into the Reserve Police Academy in Monroe, a stepping stone that led to her subsequent role with Lake Forest Park Police Department. Rhonda's tenure with the Lake Forest Park Police Department started in 94 as a police reserve officer 30 years ago. During that time, Lake Forest Park had about 18 police reserve officers and around 6 to 8 full-time police officers. So while working at Coco's in Redmond, she applied and then hired into the role of a full-time police dispatcher in 96 for the city of Lake Forest Park, as we had our own dispatch service. And then seizing the chance to become a full-time officer for Lake Forest Park in 98. Her responsibilities are multifaceted, encompassing roles in training, investigations, first aid, AED, CPR instruction, as well as one of her first loves, which is tactical medical training. She loves the gore, whether it's a horror movie or the real thing of investigating numerous dead body calls or holding up a ripped up foot from a motorcycle accident. At one time, Rhonda was part of the Seattle PD's CBRN cadre, teaching chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear defense response. Rhonda served as a field training officer, training multiple officers as they started their careers in law enforcement. She served as a major crimes task force detective for CSPA and the domestic violence liaison for the PD, enabling her to go to a yearly conference on domestic violence issues. And recently she became an ABLE instructor, teaching a culture of police work to our officers that care for each other through duty to intervene with compassion and policing in our public. She has over 4,000 hours of training with Lake Forest Park PD. Her commitment to growth led her to graduate from both the Command College and LPO, which is Leadership in Police Organizations, a several-month course of leadership by State Patrol, Washington State Patrol. This pathway led to becoming the first female in a supervisory position in our police department, starting with sergeant and then a command staff position as lieutenant as the operations division commander. Rhonda has worked for 5 police chiefs, 6 if you want to count an interim chief, including one previous chief that said women don't belong in law enforcement. She worked for 5 different mayors: Roger Lotion, David Hutchinson, Mary Jane Goss, Jeff Johnson, and Tom French, and countless council members. She started during the large annexation of LFP in 94, where the city was very small, consisting of basically everything east of 35th to our current border of 55th, and then 185th to the north with Hamlin Road Beach Drive as the south border. So it's about a quarter of the city as it is right now. It was around this time that the hillside area was getting annexed along with Sheridan Heights neighborhood. In 1995, it is what we see today, except for some small annexations in Acacia that came a few years later. Beyond her personal or professional life, she has 3 children, 2 daughters and her eldest son. And one consistent joy is her passion for all things Disney, Disneyland, Disney World. Having traversed between the 2 parks over 50 times, she's also achieved recognition as a runner, earning medals, including ones from Disney World and Disneyland. A remarkable feat that often brings a smile is her daring rappel down the Rainier Tower in Seattle in support of Special Olympics. She's also had an integral part of Chief for a Day, a celebration of a child that had special needs and was picked to be a chief for a day. It was a coordinated event for several months, culminating in one day at the police academy. Today, she is here to say goodbye as we shared her journey as a female police officer in a traditionally male profession, honoring her for her dedication to the city and community and experiences that have contributed to her remarkable success. She is also my best friend of over 20 years. We have done so many things and so many stories, both professionally and personally, from the roadsides when we ate the McDonald's McGriddles when they first came out, reading magazines because no cell phones to serve, to the guy with the sock and the stolen mail night and the creepy buildings behind the Elks Lodge trying to beat you out of the locker room from changing into civilian clothes after shifts, trying to stop you from going to calls by yourself, the countless lunches we had, the camping trips, 2319. That's what she said. Amazon deliveries, family trips, Supernatural in the Winchesters, horror nights and karaoke nights, from 1999 WTO to 9/11 to the Nisqually earthquake, to the off-duty gigs at Space Needle, SeaTac Airport after 9/11, UW Sports, and the support you gave during the pandemic, the protests, the riots, all hours of conversation of the craziness during those times. It's been a wild ride and I'm going to miss you deeply. Thank you for all you did for the city, the staff, the community, the officers, and for being my best friend. Thank you for having my back always and helping me do my job the best of my ability. We are only as successful as the people around us. From Coach Ryan Stevens, and I want everybody to listen closely. There are 5 types of friends. The covenant friend, who is your ride or die. They're always there for you. Your spiritual friend, this person will pray for you. This person you'll go to for advice, spiritual advice when you're down. The third is a confidant, where you go to for life decisions, the one you can share wins with. Because sometimes we can't share wins with people that are jealous. This is the person that you can come up to and say, I want $1 million, and they say, good for you, looking for nothing in return. Next is that hospitable friend that cares for your well-being. This person's always like, how are you doing? And not how you doing at work, how is your heart? Do you have that friend? Because that friend brings life. And lastly, we all need that hitman. The person that says when stuff went down, they don't ask questions as they roll out. I know that sounds bad coming from a police officer. Please don't take it the wrong way. If you have a friend that's 2 or more of these, you need to tell them thank you and appreciate them. We all need to give capital to others, especially those on your journey in life, and you can't do it alone. And for me, Rhonda hit all of them. Thank you, and I appreciate you. And as the famous demon slayer Dean Winchester would sing, carry on, my wayward son, there'll be peace when you are done. Lay your weary head to rest. Don't you cry no more. Congratulations on a long, successful career, and best wishes in retirement.
Oh, thank you.
So I have a frame for Rhonda. That's a glass frame here that says, thank you for your service, Lieutenant Rhonda Lehman, Lake Forest Park Police, 94 to 2024. Thank you for your dedicated service to Lake Forest Park Police Department and the community. Your leadership and contributions have been truly invaluable to our officers, staff, and citizens alike. Your presence will be deeply missed. Wishing you a fulfilling retirement ahead. And you get another Chiefs, because I know you've had plenty of those in your lifetime there. And then, as some of you know, in the police department, we have banners very similar to sports teams that retire somebody from sports, and they hang them up in the banners with their numbers. We do that with their call signs. And what we do is we have everybody that's working at the time sign all the signs. So Rhonda's Lincoln 2. That is her number that she uses as the lieutenant, but she was originally Frank 10. That's how she came into the police station. There is another Frank 10 here, but this is the original G. Oh, G. So you see the last name and the Frank 10 and everybody signing. At the very bottom here, you have some specialty things where you have the Major Crimes Task Force, Detective, FTO, First Aid CPR instructor, Sergeant, and Lieutenant. And these are the things that, yes, this is for you.
Thanks.
And then just like in sports, we like to have have you sign your banner, and then this hangs in our patrol area with the rest of the banners that we have. It's awesome. All right.
Thank you.
And Rhonda, if you'd like to say anything, feel free.
Should I just start at the beginning of this again?
Yeah.
I didn't prepare anything, but this is my city. This will always be my city. My goal was to leave this city better than I found it. And like you said, there was some different attitudes towards women in law enforcement when I started here. And I wasn't gonna put up with that, and those people are no longer here. So hopefully the city's better than when I started, and hopefully the people that we leave behind, I couldn't have done it without any of these people. Lee was a dispatcher with me when I started. She trained me from the jump. She gave me half of my attitude. Ron Houston was here the whole time. He taught me a lot of what I know. I couldn't have done it without the good people that I worked with. So thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. So should we get a picture with
Yes,
Chief and
that's
everybody
nice.
up here? And Rhonda, I was gonna say something nice about you, then I found out you went to Shoreline High School. I'm a shortest for that.
Oh, we used to fight you.
Yeah. See, there you go. So it's a proclamation, everybody, please. Just wanna. Move around.
Great. Thank you.
There you go. Thank you so much. Well, I.
Oh, did you want to hear the Barbie story?
Yes.
You bet.
So ever since I was very little, I always wanted to be a policeman and my dad did not want me to be a policeman. And ever since I was 5 years old, I told my dad, I'm gonna be a policeman. I really don't care what you say. And so he would buy me Barbies and he bought me a Barbie dream house and a Barbie Corvette and I had a Ken and Barbie. So Ken would pull Barbie over in the Barbie Corvette and arrest her for prostitution.
What's the last sheet?
Well, just quickly, a quick anecdote. So when I became a council member, I was elected in 2011. In 2011, I believe, we had a massive flood in Lake Forest Park. And as a council member, newly elected council member, I was trying to figure out, floundering around, trying to figure out what I was going to do. As I was driving around town center, which was half flooded, Brookside Boulevard was under about 18 inches of water. I came across Rhonda standing in the middle of Brookside Boulevard in her blues, holding open a storm drain because it was helping prevent additional dangerous flooding. It took me a little while to convince her that I could stand there in the middle of the road so she could help traffic. But that's the kind of person that she, was as a police officer and is as a person. She was always there to jump in, to help out into a flood in her dress blues to make sure that people were safe and everything was going well. So you're going to be sorely missed, Rhonda. And I know that there are a lot more stories that have probably been shared offline that we haven't heard about, but we do appreciate your service to the community. You've been an extraordinary contributor to our community, and we thank you for that. So. Good, Chief? Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. And thank you all for joining us tonight. We are moving on to more PD fabulous discussions here. Presentation, the promotion of Lake Forest Park Police Department Lieutenant Ross Adams.
All right, Ross, come on up here.
This is, as I said, it was sort of bittersweet night. We have a retirement and a
Promotion, same night.
it's wonderful.
All right, so tonight we'll be swearing in Ross Adams as our new police lieutenant. Ross is a Northwest native, born and raised in Seattle. Early on, he had a passion for music and began playing piano at the age of 5. By the time Ross was in high school, he enjoyed playing jazz, blues, and rock in multiple music groups and continued playing well into his 20s. Growing up, Ross's family was very active outdoors. From a very early age, Ross was skiing, hiking, hunting, and fishing all over the Pacific Northwest, and he continues this active lifestyle today with his own family. Despite his love for music and the outdoors, Ross had another passion that was passed down by his father, who was a longtime Seattle police officer and administrator. This was a passion for public service. In 2001, Ross was certified as a reserve officer for Linwood Police Department in early 2002. After trying balancing a busy real estate career with a part-time law enforcement career, Ross realized his love for public servitude was too great, and he went to work full-time for Linwood PD. During his time at Linwood, Ross served as a police officer, crime scene technician, and detective, earning his valuable career training and experience. Ross then resigned from Linwood PD in December of 2012 to be a full-time stay-at-home father for his then infant son. Ross will admit that there were challenging times, but also some of the most rewarding times of his life. Ross re-entered the workforce in 2015 when he was hired on by Lake Forest Park PD. He was drawn to the close-knit community, largely in part because of the relationship between the police department and the citizens. As an officer, Ross thoroughly enjoyed the opportunity to work with and mentor other officers, as well as train newly officers as a field trainer. It was during this time he discovered his love of leadership and began working toward his goal of being promoted to sergeant, which he accomplished in the spring of 2018. Since then, he has sought every opportunity to expand his knowledge and expertise in modern police leadership and is very excited for this next chapter in his life. So now we're going to have Judge Grant come on up here and do a little swearing in. So we just.
All right. Yes. You raise your right hand. I, Ross Adams,
I, Ross Adams,
having been duly appointed
have been duly
as Police Lieutenant for the City of Lake Forest Park, Washington,
appointed as police lieutenant of the city of Washington,
do solemnly swear
solemnly swear
that I will faithfully and impartially
that I will faithfully and impartially
perform the duties of the office
perform the duties of the office
as prescribed by law
as prescribed by
and to the best of my ability,
and to the best of my ability,
and that I will support and maintain
that I will support and maintain
the ordinances of the City of Lake Forest Park
ordinances of the city of Lake Forest Park
and the laws and the Constitution of the State of Washington
and the laws and the Constitution of the state of Washington
and the United States of America.
and the United States of America.
Congratulations.
Ross, if I can come have you over here, and if you would just please take that sergeant badge off.
Wow.
And then Spencer, if you want to come on up here,
Oh, that's cool.
all right? And then Spencer, if you don't mind putting this on your dad. There you go. There you go. Awesome.
Very nice.
I'm going to present the certificate of appointment to Lieutenant Ross Adams, and then we're going to get a picture with
You bet. So Spencer, we're recruiting, you know.
Yeah.
So Chief, in consideration of family and friends that are here, would you like to take a 5-minute recess?
That would be fantastic.
Okay, we're recessed for 5 minutes. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Mayor.
Started if,
Keep it.
thanks, everybody. Okay, we'll reconvene here. And with that, we're moving on to Chief Harden, the Police Department 2023 Annual Report. Mike,
Yes, it's
please.
quite the police night tonight. So we wait for Matt to pull up our PowerPoint. All right, so tonight we're going to go over the 2023 year and the annual report to council. This is, I believe, the 11th year that I've done this, and this is the format that we've used for all 11 years. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I want to go briefly over the mission and values. So our mission is to develop and support a team of professionals who consistently seek and find innovative policing strategies to affirmatively promote, preserve, and deliver those quality services, which enhance the security and safety in our community. And to support this mission, we will work with a strong partnership with the community. And then our value statement is our department values the sanctity of all life. We strive for the equal, equitable, and compassionate application of law enforcement services for all, and the universal acceptance of all people. We endeavor for the highest level of training and diversity for our police staff and maintain partnerships within our community and local governments to provide urgently needed resources for those in need. So you'll probably see a lot of those topics and those little things hit throughout the annual report and what we've done over the years. So tonight I'm going to go over the beginning part with our staff and how things are going with our staff. And then Lieutenant Lehman will talk about patrol operations. Lieutenant Zanella will talk about support services. And then we're going to inject our new Sergeant to Lieutenant Adams into the mix with state accreditation and what that's all about. He'll talk about the transition from radar to racer and how that's going. And then I'll talk a little bit about our NORCOM transition, and then we'll talk community outreach and then our future. So this is our PD organizational chart. For the most part, the easy way to look at it is there's two lieutenants that have two different divisions. There's the patrol operations, and then there's the support services. The patrol operations has basically the uniformed police officers. So you're going to have 4 different sergeants on 4 crews, 2 nights, 2 day shifts, and then you have the officers underneath. And then the support services side is basically everything else, and which is a very demanding job. The support service office or support service division commander, Lieutenant Zanilla, has the evidence and property, the records, the investigations, professional standards, training. It encompasses everything that's basically supporting the patrol officers and our police department. I also have the emergency management, which is Kevin Lowry, that is part of our organizational chart. You'll see in the red that there's 3 open positions because throughout the years, there will be different snapshots, but for the most part, that's what we looked like for 2023. We were down in detective, and then we were down a position in patrol on 1 squad and in another squad. In 2023, we saw Officer Jess Brecht. He was with us for about 3 years, and then Officer Bo Zelenak was with us for 5 years. Officer Jess Brecht was our firearms instructor, so we ended up having to find a position or an officer to fill that spot at some point. And then Officer Bo Zelenak, two hard losses for us, ended up going to Lake Stevens, and I have had plenty of talks with the chief there. And then during the year, we had 3 new hires, and I believe this council has met most of everybody there. So we have Officer Francisco Montague that was from Briar Police. He is on the road working and doing a phenomenal job, all kinds of good stuff. He's looking at doing SWAT coming up to get on that SWAT team. I'll talk about later. And then Officer Huberman Alsine, unfortunately, we got him through almost the end of his last rotation of training, and he got recalled in the Army for active duty and is now stationed in Haiti. So I don't know if you saw the news, there was an attack on the Haitian base where for the Army. He was he was supposed to be there during that time, ended up timing wise, thankfully for his sake, to another base, but he is there stationed till December. So it's kind of a loss for us, but hopefully we'll get him back sooner. That would be great. And then Officer Sam Gowan has, this is the interesting part. She was hired May 1st of last year. And if you look, next week is May 1st, and she's just now entering her 3rd rotation of training. So she's almost on the road. And so it's a long process. And this is an example, real time, of an officer that we hired a year ago and almost by herself on the road. And then we have Eric Trout, which is our police chaplains. We have 2 police chaplains, Andy Koss and Eric Trout, both that are phenomenal for not only the public when we have calls that need help, guidance, and spirit with the people that they deal with. Most of the time it's with deaths that they offer support, but they also offer support to our officers. They go on ride-alongs, talk to officers about things that they're going through, and it's just another ear. So we have the racer crisis responders, we have the chaplains that are just that extra help for our staff. And then we also hired at the very beginning of the year, Nancy Shattuck is our domestic violence advocate. We had Jenny Grogan that was with us for 30 plus years. And now Nancy has taken over that spot. She works for several different municipalities, knows this job very well, and has done an outstanding job. Safety in Lake Forest Park. So over the past several years, you've noticed probably in the last several years, these emblems of being safe cities. And we have been in the top 10, 15 for many, many, many years. And it's always been the vision of the police department to ensure our city, the Lake Forest Park, is one of the safest cities in the Puget Sound region, achieved through delivery of quality law enforcement services. And in 2023, we accomplished this through the hard work of our employees combined with the active engagement of the community of Lake Forest Park. So in 23, Lake Forest Park received the recognition of second in the safest places in the state of Washington. And then we were 15th in the SafeWise safest cities in March 24. We had a few crimes that happened in the city that kind of pushed us down a little bit, which is unfortunate, not really out of our under our control, but we still continue to try and maintain that safe city. And we will till each of our officers is done and retire. That is our goal. So next is Lieutenant Rhonda Lehman, which everybody has heard of and knows her entire background now.
Am I changing the pages?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, this way. Oh, I did it. Okay. So these are our response numbers from 2023. We've had over 9,400 incidents involving police response. Our 5-year average is around 10,000. Most of these numbers that I'm going to talk about tonight, the COVID years really threw numbers off. So they're going to look low and then it's going to look high, but it's only because things are getting back to normal. Just a couple of things I want to talk about. Criminal traffic has gone up. Malicious mischief, vehicle prowls. These things have been a problem for us recently, and it's just more of the consequences of the law changes. Drug arrests have gone way down again, consequence because of the law changes that are hopefully getting changed. Slowly but surely, we're getting things back to normal. Property crimes, we're actually doing pretty good. Burglary has gone down, but as you can see, it went way down in 21. And now it's heading back up into an average number that we're used to. Motor vehicle thefts, unfortunately, are going up. They're, again, another byproduct of the law changes. Thefts, vehicle prowls have gone up. And the vehicle prowls will include the malicious mischiefs. We're getting a lot of broken windows and a lot of car prowls and stuff like that throughout the city. We're taking some extra steps, doing some extra patrols, heading out to areas where these things are occurring. Okay, any questions on any of those slides? I don't go, okay. Collisions, our 6-year average, 118, as you can see. Ballinger and Bothell is where most of the collisions occur. Northeast 178th as well. Again, collisions obviously went down in 2020. There weren't a lot of cars on the road. I don't know how 89 people managed to hit each other when there was nobody out there. So we're headed back up. We're still not near 2019 numbers. And I think we're gonna stay around 130, 120 is usually about average for the city this size. Red light and school zone cameras. This is another one that got blown way up, as you know, when schools went back into session and people weren't used to the cohorts, and we had all the different hour changes for when school started and when school stopped. And so we had a huge explosion in traffic camera tickets because apparently people thought it was a free-for-all during COVID and had to learn how to drive again through the school zone. So now we're back down to our averages. Same with the red light tickets. You can see the 3-year averages there. I'm sorry, I lost my eyesight working here so long. SR 522 and 170th, I think, is probably gone down. So 522 and 170th is actually doing better than the other two areas as far as tickets there. So I have a couple patrol stories I want to share with you if you don't have any questions about any of the previous slides. Yes, sir.
Thank you for your report so far. And one of the things that I noted was on the incident map with the collisions. It wasn't so much 178th as that line that goes off to the west is on Perkins. And I'm wondering if that was, something that the police department had noted, or if I'm just misreading the map.
That the collisions are on Perkins?
Yeah.
We don't have a whole lot of collisions on Perkins. I think it's just the way the dots are probably lined up on the little graphic there. It's 178th and Ballinger and Bothell, yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, so this patrol story, we went to a home invasion 911 call. And what I want to highlight on this call is Officer Carlswood showed up at a shooting, and he had attended a class that's very important to me that our officers got, which was tactical medical training. And he recognized the need to bring in the special equipment in addition to all of his regular stuff, because this was a shooting and he didn't know the injuries. He showed up and he observed a subject who had multiple gunshot wounds, and he immediately started taking stuff out of his kit, and he tried to render aid, even though fire showed up within minutes and said, these are injuries incompatible with life. However, they turned around and they got a hold of the chief and they said, this officer did everything he could beyond anything we've ever seen. He did an excellent job. And they were really impressed by our training, because typically over the years and even the last, I don't know, 15, 20 years, officers weren't equipped with the equipment we have, and we always had to wait for aid to show up. And now we can take those precious seconds and apply this equipment, and people have positive outcomes. Unfortunately, this gentleman passed away, but Officer Carlswood didn't give up, and he had the equipment and he tried to use it and did a really good job. Second patrol story. Again, I like the medical stuff. So we went to possible drug overdose cardiac arrest call. I watched the video on this one. It was an extremely chaotic scene. Our officer got there. He was by himself initially, and he recognized what this was, an overdose, and he immediately took control of the situation. The people around continued to act chaotically and essentially interfere with what he was doing. But he remained calm. He administered Narcan, and then he immediately went to the AED, and he was providing advanced medical care prior to fire showing up. And this person survived, and aide actually contacted the chief and said this was likely contributed to this person surviving, this officer's actions. Because as you know, in a scene like that, fire will not come in until we say the scene is secure. So that can add many minutes for their medical intervention. So our officers are actually doing that. As soon as the scene is secure, they're providing care. Any questions on either of those stories? Okay, I think that's me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Lieutenant Diego Zanella. I'm the boring lieutenant because one retired, one got promoted. I'm the stable one, very boring, but I'm in charge of detectives, which is really cool. So, well, actually, I'm in charge of one detective, and that's what happened this year, because it was a very strange year with one detective who basically had two jobs. One was to do investigations, criminal investigations, and the other one was to take care of the background investigations for the possible new officers. So he really worked hard, and Craig Tashlock is one of the best detectives I have managed in my 20 years of career. Very, very hard worker, and he tried to do his best. He had an average of over 70 cases every time that he showed up to work. So he had to do some sort of triage. And of course, he did an excellent job with the backgrounds, because those need to be done very thoroughly. It's extremely important to do it. Take your time. You know, I always said it's extremely important to choose the right people for our department. So he did an excellent job. And we had more violent crimes, unfortunately, but that's pretty much a trend nowadays. And in the last year and a half, Washington State is unfortunately one of the few states in US where the robberies and assaults cases went up. So the stats that you can see are the incoming cases. So the cases that I gave to Craig Tashlock to investigate. Any questions?
Colleagues, questions?
So you can see from this graph, basically, the two big portion of that slide. You can see that he spent so much time in doing the background investigations. And of course, thefts and frauds were also a very large component of our amount of cases. Now it's not working.
Is it stuck?
Yeah, it's stuck. Okay. So this graph is about the cases that were completed. So the cases that he finished. You can see that he did it. Once again, he completed a lot of background investigations, but also as a total, he did a lot of work because, you know, if you come to work and you have 70 cases, you really have to work hard in order to complete over 80 cases. And so he did an excellent job because he was very committed. And there was also a good part from our patrol officers and supervisors. So what I asked patrol was, if you have time, please do all the follow-ups, interrogation, felony filings, everything that doesn't need to go to the detectives. So we can take some of the load from Tesla. And, you know, our patrol officer supervisor did an excellent job in taking some of the cases that usually would have gone to Craig. Maybe new batteries. You can see the from the graph, the investigation. And this is a very good slide because it shows that basically 3 out of 4 cases that we had went to the prosecutor's office for charging. So basically, if you commit a crime here and it's a felony, you go to jail, pretty much. And the others, of course, you can see the green portion is like, if you don't have enough evidence, you don't have enough evidence. You can't really charge the people, but that's our legal system. And thank God we have that legal system. But for the most part, if you do something, you go to jail. This is the investigation story. I apologize. Okay, so in May, in the afternoon of May 6th, dispatch, at that time we had bottle dispatch, told our officer that there was a robbery that had just occurred. And the guys now was leaving. He had taken the backpack from a young lady and was walking towards Starbucks. Actually, eventually he went to Starbucks. He took the credit cards and the ID of the victim, dropped everything else and went to Albertsons. So our officer, and I think Sergeant, he left. Sergeant Parrish was in charge of the day shift. They immediately responded and located the suspect. The victim was very, very stressed. And we understood after that why, because this was not just a robbery. He was about to molest her, sexually molest her. So this was, now we have something more than just a robbery. And I was very happy that our officer were able to catch the guy when he was, so from Starbucks, he went to Albertsons because he wanted to use the credit cards of the victim to buy some gift cards. So he could use those gift cards. But our officer stopped him and arrested him. And the victim basically ID'd him and said, yep, that's the person who unfortunately wanted to sexually assault. So I really like this story, although it's a pretty bad story because it happened in our town, because it shows really how, well, I'm sorry, I want to go back a little bit. When when the person started to unzip the pants and show, basically the woman started to scream. And one of the neighbors immediately jumped out and assisted her. So this case is really important because it shows that if the citizens, the police, like patrol officers and the detectives work together, we can really make a difference. And this is a good case. And this is also a good case because the guy who got arrested got 53 months in jail, which is pretty good for Washington state standards. So it's a bad story that ended in a good way, if there is a good way when you have a robbery and a possible sexual assault. But I like the fact that we work together with the citizens and the detectives work really well with patrol officer, and we stop this person for doing more damage. So it's pretty good story. I think that's it for our story. Sorry, clicker doesn't really work. Matt, can you go to the next one or? Okay. Yours.
I don't have any great stories, but I'm going to talk to you about a few things. And that's very strange seeing my face up there. Okay. All right. So as I've talked about in past presentations to council, I am the department's accreditation manager. And the department has been state accredited through the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs for many years now. What is accreditation? Accreditation is it's an industry best practices standard. So there's an organization of sheriffs and police chiefs that have gotten together and formed this fantastic organization that helps certain agencies regulate what they do. So they meet really the cutting edge standards for everything from policy and use of force and vehicle pursuits. And we know a lot of that legislation has changed in the last few years. So it's been great having this agency help guide us in our practices. But what I'd like to state here is that in the state of Washington, there are, more than, well, it says more than 250 plus police departments and sheriff's offices in the state. And that of these, only 64 have this accreditation, and that the city of Lake Forest Park in the city, or in the county of King, excuse me, we are one of only 14 that are accredited in the county. We are currently going through the 2024 accreditation process, and we will have news for you soon on that. The other thing I want to talk about is the RACER program, and this was formerly known as RADAR. If you know this program, established in 2023 through an interlocal agreement between the cities of Kirkland, Bothell, Kenmore, Lake Forest Park, and Shoreline. We now have embedded social workers that go out and assist anyone truly in need of mental health support and in need of those services. I believe the program has 12, currently now 12 crisis responders. These are embedded social workers. It allows for really a multidisciplinary approach to assisting people on the street and assisting our community members. And we have a stat up there that in 2023, there were 39 individuals that our crisis responders met with. And this led to a total of 221 encounters. And what we anticipate going forward is that this will just continue to increase. This is a very robust program. It is ever expanding, and it is just an invaluable resource to the officers and to the community. I believe that's what I have.
All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about NORCOM. And so I know everybody knows because it took a huge hit in our budget. I know that finance knows it, and city administration and council.
Yeah.
So we were partners with Bothell for a long, long time, 20 years. And Bothell just decided that they were going to discontinue their dispatch service with Lake Forest Park. And then they entered an agreement with NORCOM. So we explored all kinds of different ways of which direction we would go. The most fiscally responsible was to go with NORCOM, and it has been outstanding. NORCOM Governing Board approved Lake Forest Park's inclusion on August 11th of last year. And then we began operations with NORCOM on November 1st. And I got to say, the notice to trying to get this done in November 1st was quite the haul. We have the same system called New World System or Tyler Systems. So our officers understand it, but there was a lot of moving parts and procedures and policies that changed in subtle ways. And then there's radio procedures that we had to get used to. When you have, I don't know, was there a dozen Bothell dispatchers around there? To 60 plus dispatchers with NORCOM. It's different. You have those relationships, and now they're developing the relationships with the NORCOM telecommunications. NORCOM is a regional dispatch center that manages over 350,000 calls for 8 police agencies and 13 fire agencies, including Lake Forest Park, with, like I said, 60 dispatchers 24/7. So anybody have any questions about NORCOM and how things are going or have been going? I will just report out that it was quite a struggle, and we made it all the way through, and things are going well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our community here. It has been a strain with staffing for the last couple of years, and how we accomplish this stuff is mind-boggling. I remember Councilmember Philippa Cass over for her statement really affected, I think it was like 6 or 7 years ago, just amazingly how we're able to do what we do. And then Councilmember Tracy Ferratani said today the same exact thing of how we accomplish the things we do with how small we are, with the resources we have. We did Shop with a Cop. We did the Summer Safety Day. We did Polar Plunge with Rotary, and then Polar Plunge with Special Olympics and National Night Out, which we had like 30 neighborhoods that we roundabout way touched. And Torch Run for Special Olympics, the department visitors where we have kids and families and Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. Well, actually, it's not Boy Scouts anymore. It's just Scouts. Scouts that have come in, and we just had so many visitors throughout the year. We've had the blood donations and the drives, Shoreline Fire Pancake Breakfast, the menorah lighting at the mall. There's just so many different things that we do throughout the year, and it's just amazing how we put our community together with our police officers and staff. And then talking a little bit about our North Sound Police Foundation. I know tonight, I believe you're going to be working on a donation mechanism for the city. It's been extremely helpful for the police department, especially in the tight budgets. So North Sound Police Foundation used to be with Mill Creek, and then we took Lake Forest Park, put them together and created the North Sound Police Foundation. I will say this is a 23 report. But in 24, Lake Stevens Police Department has joined the foundation. So we have that much more of a multi-factor community growth. And Lake Stevens has a lot of very generous people as well. So it's amazing to see this starting to grow. The foundation has provided over $50,000 in funds just in 23 with eyes and ears for training, a storage trailer. And that storage trailer came into effect where we were able to build a health and wellness gym for the officers, which is in effect today. And I think about 75–80% of the staff is using it on a frequent basis. And so it's really cool to see that happen. We did a health and wellness training day that was the costs were taken over by the foundation. We had the entire department there getting trauma and health and wellness training for the day. We did pictures and just had a great day that day. And then all of the gym equipment was paid for by the foundation and then WASPIC grants. And then we have got pepperball equipment, so less than lethal use of force equipment that came in. We were able to get the equipment through there. And then in the future, we're still looking at health and wellness resources, any kind of radio equipment that we had gotten about 2 months ago. Any of the UAV drone equipment that we'll get, K9 program, we're trying to get that up and running. We have a current officer right now that's at the conference that's getting really geared up for K9. We're doing oral boards for traffic. So we're looking at a motorcycle and equipment there. If we can pull that off, and then e-bikes and, for the bike trail for the mall. So all these kind of ideas that the foundation will help out with. And so for the future, I'm going to repeat myself a little bit here, but we're going to continue to do the support for retention. Like as of right now, we are fully staffed on paper. We have 4 to 5 people that are not deployable on the road. And then Lieutenant Lehman leaves on April 30th. That's her last day next Tuesday. And then the very next day, we hire an officer on board that's an exceptional officer, meaning they've been to the academy. They'll go right into field training, which we go -1 to full staff the next day. So it is a constant balance. Thank you very much for the council and finance and the city being able to approve the +3. I'm trying to get us to that point where we're in that plus zone. It's just been very difficult. Good financially, I guess, because we don't have the plus, but we're trying to use this vehicle to build upon how long it takes to get somebody on the road. And it's been very, very helpful that we can continue to talk to people, oral boards, and get people hired and go through backgrounds. We've gone through 20+ folks and only hired 1 or 2. So it's a tough road, but we're going to continue that support for retention, and we'll continue to find the best people that can serve our community. I look for 2 things: customer service, no matter who you are. I want somebody that provides great customer service, and health and wellness, somebody that takes care of themselves physically and mentally. And those are very important attributes that we want as our officers, because they pay off in dividends to our community. And then The K-9 and traffic program, that's what we're working on, and the 9mm system. So we've transitioned our weapon systems from the 40, 45, 9, where we're buying all kinds of different ammo, to one system, which is actually cheaper for the city, and it's just more effective for our officers and a better training platform. Health and wellness is always going to be a focus as long as I'm working here. The gym was completed in 23. Training will always be a component of it. Any kind of equipment and access to wellness resources, and continue our culture. I want to have healthy people because this is a long and tough job. Technology, we want to continue to always look for software to add efficiencies wherever we can. Like I explained earlier, e-bikes and UAVs and 3D, like the virtual training where you have the devices you put on your face, and then you go, do call outs of, use of force in incidents or medical or mental health cases, or however the officers need to respond. We've transitioned to red dot on our weapon systems. And then down the road, I know where we have a very much of a focus on our climate, and looking at electronic patrol vehicles, very interested in how that's going to phase in and how we'll best use that. Star Chase is one of the technologies that I believe July will start rolling out to. July?
Yeah.
June. So we're going to do an install of Star Chase, which is basically like a Batman, Spider-Man kind of suction onto a car during a possible pursuit. And it's just a technology to lessen the officers actually have to drive after somebody. And then we can do a locate on those vehicles that are normally stolen in those cases. License plate readers are becoming quite the norm, and a lot of agencies are doing it all over. The system's called what is it called? With an L. Flock, sorry. Flock is the name of the system. A lot of agencies are going to it. In fact, I know that some of our neighborhoods, I believe 12 degrees north, they have a Flock system. These systems basically are able to read vehicles, descriptions, and plates. And what it does is it gives us the ability to find a lot of vehicles that we're looking for, and by guys that may have been in part of a burglary, and then we know where their car was last seen. It trips the officers on their cell phones or their computers and say, this vehicle just entered into the city. They can find where this vehicle is. So a lot of cities are starting to implement that, and hopefully down the road, we can look at that. The Axon Roadshow is something that we did last year. It was very successful. Sergeant Parrish is going to be doing it in May again. And then it just basically talks about technology that Axon has done with their tasers and their body worn cameras and their training systems, their drone UAV systems. And a lot of software that they've been rolling out that's got AI in it. I mean, there'll be a day, I'm sure at some point where, admin can sit in front of a computer in their office, and the officer that's in a high risk incident, they hit their camera, and then bam, we've got a live view of it going on. And that kind of technology is happening. It's amazing stuff. And then some of the things that we're looking for is like a hero day or creative community events. We have the safety day, Shop with a Cop, National Night Out. We're looking at building a citizens academy, and any other creative ideas that our staff comes up with. So that's our future. So to the community and the council, I see this every single year. Thank you so much for your support. It has always been fantastic every single year for so long, and we appreciate it. And any kind of questions or comments I can field.
Thank you, Chief.
Yep.
Deputy Mayor Bodie.
Thank you very much, Chief, and thank you to your whole team. I do continue to greatly appreciate the work that goes on, and your annual report is excellent again this year. I think most of the citizens of Lake Forest Park don't have any awareness of what's happening because the department is handling things so well. I know when I talk to my neighbors or my friends, they're completely unaware of that distribution of crime that you have gone through, or even the handling of the mental health crises. I mean, look at that 221 incidents, and how challenging that is to your team, but how greatly beneficial to our community it is. So we are a safe and connected community thanks to the work of our police department. So thank you very much.
Thank you, council member. I gotta say that that is the one thing that I talk about a lot where everybody thinks we're Mayberry. Nothing happens in Lake Forest Park and I love it. Because it's not true.
'Cause
We
it's
have
not
the
true.
same problems that every other city. We butt up against Seattle. We have the same problems, but our officers are so good at handling things. So I want that reputation that nothing happens here and I want it to always be that way. Reality is we're taking care of what we need to and we do it in a compassionate way.
Yeah, it's very good to spread the word, though, that there is work that goes on to make that so. So
ma'am.
I try to do that when I have an opportunity, because I was one of those people
Yep.
who had no
That
awareness
That
before I
brings
was
up-
on council.
That brings up, we're on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and Nextdoor. So we do get the word out when we've got some pretty big cases. Some of it we hold until we can get through those investigations, but we do get that word out. And you are one of the main reasons why we do such a good job on the CA report and getting so much information out there, because you do get a different view of what actually is going on. So.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Colleagues, questions for Chief Harmon? Councilmember Furtani.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Chief, for the work that you and your team do. And I think Deputy Mayor Bodie pointed out, but I really do appreciate the lieutenant's work on the Nextdoor thing. Really calms the waters down. You know, Nextdoor can get out of hand, and I think
Yes,
having
it
good
can.
information out there is so important.
Mention that.
Appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll bring up with Nextdoor, just so everybody knows, we can't see anything on Nextdoor. The police department does not have access to any of the neighborhoods. We don't see any of the talk that goes on. We put the word and the information out there, but we don't have access to see. So a lot of it is the sharing and then the discussions, and a lot of the public likes to go back and forth in their different views. Some of it healthy, not so healthy. So thank you. Any other questions?
Councilmember Goldman.
Yeah, thanks. I'll echo what my colleagues have said. Something that I'm curious about, and you don't have to answer right now, but over the last year or two, we've adopted quite a few less lethal technologies, even the Star Chase, pepper balls, bowler wraps. I'd be interested to hear if you have data about how are those working? Are they indeed reducing the number of violent incidents, that sort of thing?
I will get back to you. I think that's probably going to be more appropriate in a 24 report. We can get a little bit more data. I will say anecdotally right now, yes, it works. The times that we've used it have been great. I think that when an officer only has one or two tools, they have to go to those one or two tools. But when they have 4 or 5, they have those options of trying to go the least amount to where they have to go at some point. So I think once we've got a good amount of data, like I said with the bubble, it's still a small city. We don't have as many things that happen. So when I say some particular crime went up 50% and it was 2, and then it went up to 4, it's all relative. So once we get a good amount of data, I would like to know that too. I would like to know how effective it is, because if it's not effective, we don't need it. We need to move on to something else. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. I'd like to check with our colleagues online. Councilmember Saunders or Councilmember Riddle, do you have any questions or comments for the chief?
All right.
No,
Okay.
I'd just like to say a thank you as well to the chief and the entire department for everything you do.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Chief, just, yeah, Deputy Mayor Bodie, please.
I just wanted to add one thing, which isn't in your report, is response times. So I think it's greatly appreciated. All the council members recently got a report from a citizen thanking the police department for, they saw a disturbed person, and the police representative, the officer was there in a matter of minutes. So I just want to, I had forgotten that, but it's not covered by your report, but thank you so much, because we're so lucky to
Yes.
have those response times.
We do have very good response times, and I tried to work on that data that it's complicated on the old world system. And then I worked with Norcom to get it done, and they don't have that particular component set up for that particular question, but we're working on it, and I want to be able to do that in 24. So absolutely.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. You know, you actually stole some of my thunder.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Response times have been outstanding. I think the 2 times I've had to call 911, not dispatched directly, while I was on the phone, officers arrived while I was on the phone with
Outstanding.
911, which is less than 90 seconds, I think, in one, and less than 2 minutes in the other. So really outstanding, and seeing Sergeant Parrish and everyone else out on the road interacting with the public. It's really amazing. It's so extraordinary that we have our own department, and this community needs to know more. We need to celebrate it a lot more, honestly, because it is a very important resource for all of us, and we're all neighbors. So
Thank you, Mayor.
thank you, Chief. We really
right.
appreciate it. Thank you
Council.
all. Okay, where are we here? I'd entertain a motion for adoption of the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and
Second.
partially seconded.
I'm sorry.
You're okay. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any nays? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. It passes unanimously. And moving on to item 8, ordinances and resolutions for council discussion. We have Administrator Hill is talking about ordinance 2412-91, creating a new chapter in the Lake Forest Park Municipal Code relating to the acceptance of donations. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you, Mayor.
Welcome.
Evening, council. As we've discussed previously, currently the city does not have a mechanism by which we can accept donations. As the chief brought up, there is the North Sound Foundation. And in the past, when the police department has had donations made to it, that is the vehicle that we've used to accept those. Some of those has been a little more difficult because they wanted to make sure that those dollars were only spent in Lake Forest Park. So there had to be provisions put in place at the North Foundation to make sure that those monies were only spent in Lake Forest Park. If we were to adopt this ordinance, then the city would be able to take any donations specific to Lake Forest Park and hold those monies and disperse them for whatever rules, regulations that the donator requested. RCW 3521-100 does allow local governments in Washington State to receive donations. The draft ordinance before you tonight sets up limitations by which the mayor or designee can accept donations, or those that have to come to city council. Monetary under 10,000 is mayor or designee. Any monetary over 10,000 goes to the city council. Personal property supporting a city event is mayor or designee. And then other personal property is less than 10,000 mayor or designee, more than 10,000 city council. And then all real property donations are evaluated by the administration and presented to council for consideration. And then also the ordinance identifies emergency and prohibited donations. Fiscal implications would be considered at the time of the donation, especially if it was a physical piece of property being donated. City would need to evaluate costs with that, what the use would be, potential ongoing maintenance. And then section 2 of the ordinance directs finance director to establish accounting procedures to carry out the terms of the chapter. There were a few questions at Monday night's committee of the whole. One of those we have included as one of the prohibited items in the draft that you have before you tonight. Let me flip to that really quick. That would be inserted as H under prohibited donations. The concern was brought up that somebody makes a large donation to the city and then, a few weeks later or a month later makes application to the city. There could be some perceived conflicts of interest there. What the city attorney Pratt and I came up with is donors of real property or monetary donations greater than 10,000 are prohibited from applying for permits under titles 16 and 18 of the Municipal Code for 12 months. 16 is environmental protections and 18 is planning and land use code. Those are the two titles where there is discretion. And so we felt that those are probably the two that you would want to prohibit. There was some question about if a piece of property was donated to the city and the city at some point determined they didn't need all of it. Could it be subdivided, a portion sold off for other purposes? As long as there was no contingencies on that donation, the city would have the authority to go ahead and make those decisions at that time. Nothing in the ordinance prohibits council from soliciting donations. So, for the Lakefront Park, if you wanted to solicit from some outside organization to, sponsor the pavilion or whatever it may be, or a bench. And then there was a question about city employees donating. there. Sorry, lost my train of thought. Any possible conflict would be dealt with under current statutes, employee policies, and collective bargaining agreements. And the council or mayor, depending, could always decide not to accept the donation if it appeared to have or create a conflict of interest. So those were the 4 questions that we had from Monday night, and let's stand for any new questions or any clarifications tonight.
Colleagues, excellent discussion at the committee of the whole. Thank you, Administrator Hill, for bringing back the revisions. Councilmember Goldman, are you satisfied with your questions?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the language you added just to help make sure that there's no even appearances of conflicts of interest. So thank you for adding that.
Thank you, Councilmember Riddle.
Thank you. I have 3 quick comments. One is under the personal property donations directly supporting city events. In that category doesn't have the $10,000 sort of threshold. Is that because we don't expect to find higher value items donated under that category?
Sure. No, I'm sorry. No, I don't. I couldn't give you an exact answer on why we don't have a dollar amount there. We have accepted donations in the past for, people donate items for city events. If council desires in the draft that comes before you in a couple of weeks, we could put a dollar amount if you would like some thresholds there as well, similar to the other portions of the chapter.
Thank you. And then similar question for the emergencies. Would after the emergency is lifted, would council want to come back and oversee any large donations that were donated during the declaration of an emergency? So that's another area I think we would want to discuss.
I think at the end of the emergency, as part of the after action report and items such as that, it would be reported to council on what donations had been accepted by the city that furthered our response to the emergency. We're going to have to document those well, because I'm sure the auditors are going to want to know about that on their review.
Thank you. And then my last question is around item H of the real property donations greater than 10,000 and the permits. If someone needed to then, after that time, needed to get a permit, would there be a mechanism for us to return their donation to allow them to move forward with that if there was some emergency reason that they needed to do a tree permit or a building permit? Would that be a mechanism we want to build into this?
Yeah, I don't
Maybe.
know if this would address an emergency permit. This is just would be making application. I don't know, Attorney Pratt, do you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I haven't seen this type of provision before. It is very restrictive on someone's rights, and you can imagine scenarios where someone didn't anticipate needing a permit and then having made a donation. So it is something I would, I think council would want to think through that provision H, putting in some sort of criteria where this could be lifted, maybe like I think you're talking about Councilmember Riddle, maybe something like that, but it is very restrictive.
Yeah, either return the donation or maybe come to council and for an exception so that it's publicly known it's not a conflict or something. I don't know what mechanism, but I think council needs to figure something out there.
Yeah, I would think that there could be some, this will take a little more than in 2 weeks, but we could propose some criteria under which you could apply. I'm thinking, emergent situations. I think anything outside of an emergent situation, if the donor is made aware of this at that time, they should be reasonably aware of if they're planning on making application in the next 12 months to the city. So we can explore maybe some emergent situation language.
Deputy Mayor Bodie.
Yes, and on this particular provision, I would support just a waiver provision where it could come to the council for assessment in a public and transparent way. I think that would be easier. I think it will be hard to identify criteria. So it seems easier to me to just create that transparency procedure and the checks and balances by having something come to the council if Councilmember Riddle would concur in that.
Thank you.
Second question I have, sorry.
Sorry, Kim, would you like to?
I'm gonna say council still might want some basis to make that decision on. Otherwise, it might look just very arbitrary and, we're giving it to some
Okay.
people, not on others. So
That's
that's fair.
fair.
Something to give
Basis,
you some guidelines.
Something, but I was not seeing a page of, criteria, that's all. Something general makes sense, that relates to fairness and equity and so forth. So that sounds good to me. My second question is for both you, city administrator, and our city attorney. When you were putting this together, did you come across any situations where cities had foundations similar to our police foundation? It's appealing just because of the tax credit benefit of a 501c3. So I was just wondering, not for immediate incorporation into this, but for future thinking about ways that we might enhance this down the road. Did you come across that at all?
Didn't specifically look for that. I just looked for examples of ordinances at
Okay.
other municipalities.
I only know of one, and what I understand is they don't really know why,
Okay.
but I could look into that more.
It's not urgent right now. I think it would be something down the road if it would encourage people in their donations to get a tax credit, or, we could send out emails at the end of the year, just like a lot of other nonprofits do. Anyway, just food for thought, no additional work needed at this time.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bodie. Colleagues, other questions? Comments for Mr. Hill? I did want to say, as I was reviewing this last week, I had a bit of a deja vu. There was a circumstance which I won't repeat on TV, in which real property was offered to the city, and everyone thought, wow, this is fantastic. And then there turned out to be some conflicts, and we had to be very cautious and ultimately step away from that. And that goes back over a decade, I believe. But I think that the real property question is one where the conflicts can really arise. We have to be very cautious about that. Thank you, Administrator Hill. And I
Yep.
know, did you want to go sit down and then come back up?
No,
or would
I
you
thought
like-
I'd just stay here,
Just stay
unless you
here.
would like me to.
Thank you, Phil. We're on to item A, approval of resolutions 24-1951, authorizing the mayor to execute the settlement participation form for the Janssen, Washington statewide opioid settlement agreement dated January 22nd, 2024, Janssen settlement. Mr. Hill.
Thank you. This is, I think, the third settlement agreement that we brought before the council. Janssen settlement is Johnson and Johnson. It's been labeled the Janssen settlement agreement, dated January 22nd, 2024. The terms of the distribution to the city are as previously agreed in the One Washington Memorandum of Understanding, which is an exhibit to the Janssen settlement. The settlement participation form must be signed by May 11th, 2024. So that's why we are asking you for approval tonight to allow the mayor to sign that and us to email that back to them as early as tomorrow. The city's execution of the settlement participation form, as with the others, will guarantee the city receives a portion of the settlement proceeds from the Janssen settlement if executed by the required number of counties and cities, which is all the cities within the counties. So everybody has to participate.
Thank you, Administrator Hill. Colleagues, questions on point? Councilmember Furtoni.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Administrator Hill, for your comments. So this is not really different than the other two that we've already approved.
It's not, there's something in the back of my head that says this one's going to be just one payment and done. But I couldn't find that today, so it may be multiple payments, but it
Just
would
one.
be, it's just one. Okay,
Yeah, it
I
is.
was remembering correctly. It's just one payment and then they're done on this one. So you will see a large lump sum at some point in the near future, but that won't continue.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Vice Chair. Sorry to say Vice Chair Casper, excuse me, Vice Chair Furtoni. You must be late. I apologize. Colleagues, any other questions? Deputy Mayor Bodie.
If there are no other questions or comments, I would like to move the approval of the resolution.
We'd have to suspend our,
Yes.
suspend your
Oh,
rules
we do,
first. Yeah,
even for this?
not
even-
ours, excuse me.
Oh, I guess we do for this. It's not administrative, really.
Thank you.
I
Michelle.
move to suspend our three-touch rules so that we can approve resolution 24-1951, authorizing the mayor to execute the settlement participation form for the Janssen, Washington statewide opioid settlement agreement.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to suspend the three-touch rule for approval of resolution 24-1951. All those, is there any discussion? Mr. Sorry, Goldman, excuse me.
Yeah, I think just to help the public understand why we're waiving the rule, this seems to me it's non-controversial. It is time sensitive and it involves the city collecting money. So for all those reasons, it makes sense for us to go ahead and approve it tonight.
Thank you, Councilmember Goldman. Any other discussion? Councilmember Furtani?
Yes, and to add to Councilmember Goldman's comment, it also will help other cities as well. And I don't think we want to be the people that hold it up.
Thank you for that. Colleagues online, are any comments or questions? Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to suspend the three-touch rule for approval of resolution 24-1951. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any nays? The ayes have it. It passes unanimously. I'd entertain a motion for approval of resolution 24-1951. Please, Mr. Pertoni.
So I'd like to move the approval of resolution 24-1951, authorizing the mayor to execute the settlement participation form for the Janssen, Washington statewide opioid settlement agreement dated January 22nd, 2024.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve adoption of resolution 24-1951. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any nays? The ayes have it. Thank you so much, council. I appreciate that very much. Okay, we're moving on to let's move on to other business. Is there any other business that anyone would like to bring up? With that, we will move on to council committee reports. We did have a budget and finance meeting with Councilmember. Actually, let's go back to other business for a second. I would entertain a motion to excuse Councilmember Lebo.
I move to excuse Councilmember Lebo for his attendance.
Second.
It's been moved and second to excuse Councilmember Lebo. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any nays?
Nay.
Thank you. Tradition applies. The ayes have it. Well, the ayes have it with one nay. Thank you, Councilmember Riddle. Tradition is important here. Okay, then we will move on to council committee reports. Any council committee reports? How about council member reports? Councilmember Goldman.
Yeah, so since we didn't do this 2 weeks ago, some of this is actually a bit blurry in my memory, but one thing was the Seashore Forum had their meeting and I gave an earful to Sound Transit, just like I gave an earful to Metro 2 weeks ago. I don't know it'll actually do anything, but it was
We
cathartic.
made
at
it
least.
into the paper, so it's okay.
Also, I attended, not so much attended, but with Racer, I was invited to do a ride along with one of their mental health professionals, and it was good to kind of see, just to spend a few hours with them, get to see what they're doing, how they're interacting with the public, and how that. I've also done a ride along with the police department, and so kind of good to see how those are interfacing with each other. And I'd encourage, if you have the opportunity to do either, it's good to actually see kind of on the ground how things are going.
Very interesting. Thank you, council member. Colleagues, any other council member reports? Okay, mayor's report, I'll be very brief. Administrator Hill and my daughter and I attended the light rail opening on the east side, which was really an enjoyable experience. Well, it was enjoyable on the way out, wasn't it, Phil? The way back was a little bit troubling. Yeah, not troubling. It just took a little longer. We had to stop and change trains at every stop on the way back. I'm not sure what that was about, but The ride out was beautiful and then it was very slow coming back. But it was really, it's an amazing engineering feat, and it's going to be a great asset to the region and the community, and well attended by a lot of elected officials. My understanding is that Bothel's City Council, despite the fact that only the mayor was invited, the entire council attended. So they like to attend fun events, and I know they had a good time too. So it was a really enjoyable experience. Had a chance to chat with Mayor Bernie from Redmond. She is doing a wonderful job with that opening, and also had a chance to chat with CEO Sparman, and he has assured us he will get back to us as expeditiously as he can about our letter, which we resent about the asking for support about lowering speed limits on 522. So I take him at his word. He's been very responsive, and I hope that will occur. There's some other details about things with that. I can share some details with you offline without wasting everyone's time. Other thing is, on a positive note, the wildlife is out like crazy. There are deer running all over the place, so be careful. I mean, I just heard it this morning, 2 people saying deer ran right across my yard and right across Ballinger Way again. So be really careful out there. And we saw some otters down at Lion Creek Preserve yesterday, so that was pretty cool. City Administrator's report, Mr. Hill.
I just have one thing to add tonight for council who don't know. Our senior project manager, Andy Sylvia, has resigned his position effective May 17th. So we will be opening that position. So have some grace with the Public Works Department, because one, they're buried already, and now it's going to be extremely difficult to get things through there. Director Perigo is going to engage the consultants that Andy's currently using to take over as much of the project as they can, with as minimal oversight as is necessary to carry out the projects from Director Perigo. And then I will be taking on some upcoming studies through the Public Works Department to help out during that time. So we will get that advertised. You may have heard also Joanne Trudell, our Deputy City Clerk, is retiring. And we have some other movement among personnel. Hopefully everybody else stays put, but we'll keep you up to date. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Oh, and by the by, we did have an all-staff meeting. It seems like a month ago, but it was Monday. That hadn't happened for quite a while, and many thanks to Shannon, who put that together for us. It was very well attended, and some excellent questions and discussion surrounding that. With that, we're moving on to an executive session, potential litigation pursuant to RCW 42.30.110 parens I, and 45 minutes, folks. Apologies. It's going to be a bit of a longer one. With that, we're adjourned to executive session. No action will be taken when we return. Totally losing my voice here. So good evening, everyone. We are back from an executive session and we are adjourned.
Thank you all. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.